So we're going to make an Italian meringue. This is essentially a cooked meringue, which is a little bit more complicated than, say, a pavlova meringue. One of the first preparations for this is to heat a tray of sugar. I tend to sieve it just because you see here you've got a few lumps of sugar, just to make sure the sugar is completely separated. So we're going to heat up a tray of sugar, 200 degrees, and the best way to tell that the sugar is warm enough is just when it starts to slightly melt around the edge. Okay, so we'll do that in just a sec. The advantage of an Italian meringue is that the heat actually stabilizes the meringue, so it's much, much better for piping. You get a much smoother but denser meringue. You also don't have any issues with gritty meringue or weeping. It stabilizes and will hold for quite some time as well. So you can make this, cover it over, and it won't weep, or the egg white won't come away from the meringue itself. What's really important as well is that the egg whites are completely clean, as is the bowl. So in the old days, they used to take a big copper bowl. They used to wipe the edge with lemon juice, something like that. But as long as it's grease-free, you'll have success. The other consideration with the egg white is that, in fact, it will make a better meringue if the egg whites are what we call stale. So this is not directly from a fresh egg. This is where you've taken the yolks for another recipe and you've stored your whites in the fridge for up to 3 months, or in the freezer for a similar amount of time. They will keep for a long time, provided that the container that you store them in is super sterile. And the idea about the stale egg white, what we call a stale egg white, is that it allows the proteins to break down, which then become more elastic and you can trap more air. So you get a much better product with a stale white. Okay, so tray of sugar into the oven, 200 degrees, just until it starts to melt around the edge. Okay, so just 3 or 4 minutes. So the Italian meringue, we're going to pop our egg whites into a clean bowl. I always add a little bit of salt as well. It just further breaks down the proteins in the egg and helps it to incorporate the air. And then the sugar is ready from the oven. So we've got a slight bit of colour and just a little bit of melting around the edge. That's perfect. So we're just going to start by whipping this, and then we're going to slowly add the sugar. So there's a consideration here of how thick it is. So the way to test it, if you lift the whisk directly up and then turn it over. You can see this is really still quite wet and soft. So we're looking in this instance for it to be between slightly soft but relatively stiff. So it's between soft peak and stiff peak. So it needs a little bit more. So directly up and over. So you can see it's getting slightly, well, it's soft peak at the moment, just that peak's flopping over. Just a little bit more. So that's what you're looking for. This is a soft peak. What we find is if you make this too stiff, when you cook it in the oven, you get a meringue whereby when you eat it, it sticks to your teeth. It sort of crystallizes and stays on your teeth. So it needs to be nice and soft, like that. So we're going to prepare the piping bag now. We've got a plain nozzle, a metal nozzle. The nozzle goes straight in. Just make sure that the bag is well away from the tip so you can pipe it nicely. Roll it down so that it's comfortable. And then we're going to colour the meringue just using some food colouring here. This is like a food gel, and it works quite well with the meringue, so it doesn't affect the meringue at all. So just load up the brush. And then we're just going to go for some stripes. So less is definitely more with this. Don't go too crazy with the amount of stripes. And then you can start to fill the bag. Ooh. So there are two ways to cook the meringue. You can either cook them completely dry, and then they'll have a shelf life for a couple of weeks in a Tupperware container. Or you can cook them, for the day. So cooking them slightly softer means that they won't last, but they'll have that slightly marshmallow centre. So you just want to just pipe it until you see some colour. So what we'll do actually, just secure the paper. So we're going directly onto parchment paper for this. We're going to make some really small little teardrops. I always say with this, you have to learn how to breathe like a sniper. So the top of the meringue, the top of the teardrop should just flop over. That's the consistency that you need. So you want to have the same size meringue on the same tray because it will cook at the same rate. And you'll find that these get better and better the more you do. You need enough space on these. They do tend to, grow at least sort of 20–30%. You also need enough space for the air to circulate between the individual meringue in order to cook them properly.